You guys, welcome to Sick of Pricks, a type 2 diabetes podcast. I'm Mary, your diabetes bestie. And today we're talking about feelings around diagnosis. So I was diagnosed when I was 21. I went for a routine physical for work, and the doctor said, you haven't been here in a while. Why don't we do some blood work? And I thought, sure, why not? Next day, I got called. Here's your type 2 diabetes diagnosis. And I remember feeling really guilty, like I was tying down my future husband with a sick person. It's not something he signed up for, I cried, I felt sad and angry and overwhelmed at how my life was going to change completely. I grew up in a house with two type 2 parents. My parents were both diagnosed in their 40s. My mom was 300 plus pounds most of my life, and my dad was like a string bean, so complete opposite ends of the spectrum. I watched them snack on Murray's sugar-free cookies, and I watched them, check their blood sugars and inject insulin and watch what they were eating or not watch what they were eating. I knew what my life was going to look like. All the day in, day out stuff. Like, I watched it growing up. And so it should come as no surprise to anyone what I did next, which, okay, maybe it is going to come as a shock to you and I wouldn't recommend this either. I did absolutely nothing. I lived the next 5 years of my life like my diagnosis never happened. I didn't look sick. I didn't feel sick. So I lived my life like I wasn't sick. And when I went to the doctor again, when I was ready to start a family, my blood work, my weight, my blood pressure did not paint a pretty picture for my future family. And that got my attention for a little while anyway. After my son was born, I fell back into unhealthy habits for a long time. And then after my second child was born, after my daughter was born in 2010, maybe 2 years later, I finally said enough is enough. And that's when I started to really make big goals for myself in terms of my diabetes management. But here's the thing. There's no right or wrong way to handle the news of a type 2 diabetes diagnosis or any chronic disease, really. It's okay to be angry, feel sad, feel guilty, or even live in denial like I did, though that is not something that I recommend. Don't be like me. Change is scary, even if it's for the better, even if we know it's what we should do, even if we've read the research and we know all the crazy things that type 2 can bring to the table. It's still a lot. I've talked with hundreds, if not thousands, of men and women with type 2, and every story is different. Some immediately, got home from the doctor's office and immediately overhauled their entire lives. Some did it slowly, and some were like me and stuck their head in the sand. The reality is that diabetes management isn't always smooth sailing. For some of us, it's like sailing in a hurricane. There are going to be periods of time where it's like a walk in the park. Everything is going well, meds are working, you're on your game, and you're seeing the numbers you want to see, and you're hitting the goals you're working towards, and you're feeling on top of the world. And then there's going to be times when it feels like nothing is working, where you eat the same, you move the same, and the numbers don't add up. And then it's back to the drawing board to start all over again. I'm going to give you some tips to help you manage the emotions after your diagnosis. And these are helpful whether you were diagnosed yesterday or whether you were diagnosed 10 years ago, because the reality is we all need a refresher. And we go through waves of management feelings, I feel like. Some, like I mentioned, some days are smooth sailing and some days are a roller coaster and not the fun kind, right? So here's my top tips. First, acknowledge your feelings. Let yourself feel them. You don't have to hide them. You don't have to suppress them. You can acknowledge the way that you're feeling. If you are overwhelmed, if you're frustrated, if you're scared, if you're angry, let yourself feel those things. I think the important thing here is not to let yourself live in those feelings. Feel them, experience them, but also address them. Don't let yourself get stuck in the overwhelmed, the frustrated, the scared, the angry. Okay? Talk to your medical team. Talk to them about how you're feeling. That's what they're there for. They can help you address your feelings. They can help you find the right resources that you need. One of my favorite tips, and something that I created for myself, is building a support system. We're going to talk about this on a future episode, but share your diagnosis with the people that you can trust in your circle. Be selective. We'll get to that later. But also seek out a community, whether it's online, in person. You can find the links to my 2 support communities in the episode comments. I needed a group where I was going to leave feeling uplifted and feeling better about my diagnosis and the challenges that I was facing. And what I found in the online space anyway was that there was a lot of negativity, a lot of shoulding on people. Like, you should do this and you should do that. And honestly, I'm harder on myself than anyone else is going to be. And I needed a place where I felt better after visiting, not worse. And so I created Sugar Mama Strong Diabetes Support for that purpose. So you can find the link to the women's group and the men's group in the comments. Please join us there. It really is a game changer, having people in your corner who really understand what you're going through. My next tip is to educate yourself about diabetes. But there's like a little footnote here. Educate yourself through reputable sources, okay? I know it's easy in this age of social media to be listening to all these like internet gurus and stuff, but my recommendation is read the research. Read, go to the American Diabetes Association. Go to, not WebMD, not, TikTok, not Instagram. Go to legit sources to get your information. And then bring what you learn back to your medical team and ask questions. We are our own biggest advocates. So the more that we know about how our body works and how this disease works, the more success we can have in managing it. That's the goal. Practice self-care. And I know we hear self-care a lot these days. It's like a big buzzword. But self-care doesn't always mean, pedicures and massages and going to the spa. It's helping you manage your stress in an effective way. So meditate, do some yoga, exercise, find a hobby, try something new, do something to help you find your joy. The next one is something that I struggle with to do is journaling. But some people really benefit from just writing out how they're feeling to help them process their emotions and really identify patterns. You can journal not just your feelings, but your food, your exercise, your gratefulness, your medication, your weight. You can journal pretty much anything. And I always tell my members that the more information you have, where you're not relying on just your memory, where you can look back, it's like you become a detective for your own diabetes management. You can dig in there and find how your food intake related to your mood, related to your numbers, to your exercise, and you have that all in front of you, and it is an invaluable resource. So if you've never considered journaling, maybe give it a try. The next one is super important, whether you're newly diagnosed or whether you've been doing this for decades like me, is setting realistic goals. So when you get diagnosed, you have all of these what ifs in front of you, like all the complications and the, you know, challenges and the numbers and the tracking and the pricking your finger and taking medication and finding the right combo of everything. So breaking down these big changes into smaller, manageable steps to me is key. I know I mentioned before, some people, they go home from getting diagnosed, they change their entire life overnight, and they're super successful at that. I'm not one of those people. I needed small steps, small changes. For me, I started with exercise. I found something I loved, maybe, 12 years ago. I found Zumba. I was obsessed, and that was kind of like my gateway into exercise. But it can be anything. It can be drinking more water. It can be checking your blood sugar every morning. It can be making sure you take your medication. Choose one thing to start with. For me, once I made exercise that habit, then I was able to add something else. I think the problem I always had with having too many goals at the start was that I always felt like I was dropping the ball somewhere. Like I couldn't put a check mark next to everything, and that to me felt like I was failing. So instead of focusing on all the things that I couldn't do, I started concentrating on the things that I could do and that I was doing and forming habits and then adding something else. My last tip for you is that there is no shame in seeking out professional help. I think everyone, if they're able to, should have a therapist or a counselor. So if you are struggling with your diagnosis with significant anxiety, depression, or, you just need an outlet, reach out for help. No shame in that. I want you to remember that you're not alone here. So many people who are living with type 2 are feeling the same feelings that you're feeling. Focus on positive changes that you can make in your life. Small steps equal big results. And I'm going to leave you with a couple of things that I've learned over the last 25 years. You can't go back. I used to feel really guilty that I spent 5 years pretending I wasn't sick, pretending my diagnosis didn't happen. But that guilt only kept me stuck. It didn't propel me forward. And it's not going to do you any good to think about the shoulda, coulda, wouldas. All that you can really affect is right now. All you can do is learn as much as you can about yourself and your body and do your best to manage all of it. When you know more, you can do more. The second thing, and this is a big one, a lot of times when we're diagnosed, we want to, at least I've talked to a lot of people who feel like they have to punish themselves. Like, I did this to myself, so now I'm going to undo it with restriction and hours at the gym, and I'm going to beat my body into submission. But you can't hate yourself to wellness. And that is my biggest tip. If you take anything away from this episode, I want you to take away that. You can't hate yourself well. You have to love yourself there. You have to choose your food, choose your movement, choose your thoughts, choose how you spend your time out of love, not because you feel angry at yourself. Last, you're allowed to feel all of your feelings. For me, it's been 25 years. 25 years. I have been living with type 2 longer than I lived without it. And there are still days where I am frustrated and overwhelmed and pissed off and, need to get some aggression out because I don't know what the heck is going on. It's a lot. It's like this big human science experiment where you're the subject and none of the results make sense. Okay? But all you can really do is breathe. Breathe through it. Control the things that you can control. How you think, how you move, how you feel your body, and how you take the time to give your body what it needs. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.